During World War II, German U-boats turned the Atlantic into a vast killing field. From America's Jersey Shore to Europe's North Sea, no ship was safe. Beneath the waves, a new kind of war was born, where man and machine became one, an elite fighting force of steel predators, trained to hunt, survive, and strike without warning.
I never have had fear on board of a submarine, even in very dangerous situations.
How the U-boats and the men who served them became legends of the deep. Next. During World War I, Germany's deployment of the Unterseeboot, or U-boat, transformed naval warfare. These submarines targeted Allied shipping routes in an effort to sever Britain's critical supply lines. However, their attacks on neutral and passenger ships provoked international outrage and helped turn global opinion against Germany. By the war's end, U-boats had become a symbol of both Germany's naval power and its controversial wartime tactics. After World War I, the 1919 Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh restrictions on Germany, including a complete ban on U-boats. But only 3 years later, the German Navy secretly defied these terms by acquiring a Dutch submarine manufacturer and building vessels under foreign flags. Behind their deception was a clear objective: to preserve and advance Germany's submarine technology. By 1932, Germany abandoned any pretense of secrecy and openly produced U-boats in direct violation of the treaty. In September 1935, Adolf Hitler appointed former World War I U-boat captain Karl Dönitz to command Germany's expanding submarine fleet. Dönitz believed that a force of at least 300 U-boats would be needed to sever Britain's supply routes across the Atlantic. But when Hitler launched his Blitzkrieg in September 1939, the German Navy had only 57 submarines. Even so, Dönitz's U-boats proved to be a deadly weapon. Launching from heavily fortified bases in the North Sea and along the French coast, the U-boats prowled the Atlantic in search of their prey: merchant ships carrying vital food and war supplies from the United States, Canada, and South America to Britain. To survive any possible attack, the merchant ships banded together in massive groups called convoys, protected by naval destroyers. But Dönitz's U-boats struck back with a ruthless new tactic known as the Wolfpack. Spreading out in long lines across the Atlantic, they hunted for any sign of a convoy.
Each of the boats, when we were out, 10, 12 boats, later on 15 boats, had a square to go up and down with lowest speed, one propeller, 12 hours south and the same distance 12 hours north. When one of the boats got connection with a convoy, then it was not permitted to attack, but it gave this information to headquarters in Paris, and they ordered then the other boats to that position.
On the surface, U-boats could reach speeds of 17 knots, fast enough to outrun the slow-moving convoys.
We saw the smoke of the convoys, and then we approached them closer till we saw the masts and the funnel, but never that close that we saw their bridge, because when we saw their bridge, they were able to see us too.
Once assembled, the Wolfpacks waited for darkness to fall. Under the direction of a lead commander, 5 to 8 U-boats moved into position, some ahead of the convoy, others along its flanks. Their tactics were calculated and deadly. One submarine might launch a diversionary attack on the escorts, drawing them away, while the others closed in on the unprotected merchant ships.
Probably the worst moments were when you knew there was no help coming, you were going to fight it out as you were, and you had 4 or 5 ships burning at one time.
A radio man or the engine personnel, they are down in the boat. They don't see anything. There's only about a dozen of people in any submarine who see what's going on. But once the Commandant Guggenberger led me up on the bridge for a few minutes. I never forget that picture. It's ingrained in my head. And what I saw there was a large tanker with a flame as high as the tanker was long above that. And I know what I felt, and I felt great pity for the sailors on that tanker.
The Wolfpack strategy proved far more successful than anyone had imagined. Volkmar Koenig was a midshipman on U-99.
With warships, with battleships or submarines where you send torpedoes to another target, it's completely impersonal. And you don't think of the poor people that perhaps have to jump into the water from a burning tanker into the burning oil. You don't think of that. It's just something you are trained for, and you do more or less as a routine work. To a sailor on a battleship, it was a mean way of doing warfare. They sneak around here somewhere underneath, and they should come and stand it, and we shoot it out. So this is different.
On October 14, 1939, the U-boat service scored one of its most daring and dramatic victories. Lieutenant Günther Prien was tasked with striking the British fleet anchored at Scapa Flow, the Royal Navy's largest harbor and the gateway to the North Sea. That night, Prien skillfully guided U-47 into the heavily guarded anchorage, slipping past the rusting remains of Germany's own scuttled World War I fleet. Once inside, he found his target, the battleship Royal Oak. The first torpedoes missed, but the second salvo hit its mark, exploding beneath the ship's keel. Within just 13 minutes, the Royal Oak sank beneath the waves, taking 833 men with her. Germany's attack at Scapa Flow was one of the first great propaganda victories of the war, as it proved U-boats could penetrate even the home base of the British fleet. At the start of the war, the German Navy, called the Kriegsmarine, had commissioned 9 different types of U-boats, but fewer than half were capable of long-range operations. Most fell into 3 main classifications. The small Type II was used primarily for training and coastal patrols in the Baltic and North Seas. The larger Type IX was built for extended patrols across the Atlantic. The most important was the medium-sized Type VII. Designed for long-range cruises, it became the backbone of Germany's submarine fleet. Each Type VII carried a crew of 51 sailors, 4 officers, and 47 men, living and working side by side 24 hours a day inside a steel tube no longer than 2 railroad cars. Life aboard a U-boat was cramped and unrelenting, the air heavy with machinery, exhaustion, and sweat. Of course, there was no air conditioning. Fresh water was scarce, only enough for drinking, so showers were almost never taken.
We only could wash ourselves out of a small pail, but not with fresh water. We had to use seawater. And seawater, as you know, after a certain time, when the water is absorbed, there's only salt left, and that salt is getting sticky.
These conditions made for a camaraderie that existed in few other places. Every man knew that the lives of his crewmates rested, quite literally, in his hands.
The fate of all men aboard depends on the last young seaman. If a seaman on lookout didn't see a destroyer, that is the fate for the entire boat and crew. On patrol, we didn't wear our uniform or ranks. We had just more or less the same clothing aboard. We know each other and we know who was the other one.
Günther Heinrich was the captain of U-960.
We were over 8 weeks in the North Atlantic. And in this time, some boys do not see fresh air. And if any man aboard passes you, you could smell him. You did not look at him, you smell him.
Kurt Diggins was just 27 years old when he captained U-458.
I should say we were some kind of a family. I was very proud of my crew, and it was for me very important that this crew always were satisfied with the old man of 27 years.
Despite this familial feel, make no mistake, the camaraderie on board never took away from the fact that the U-boat was a lethal fighting machine. In the first year of the war, U-boats sank 438 merchant ships, an aircraft carrier, and 11 other warships. Buoyed by these early victories, the German Navy launched a massive expansion program. As the U-boat fleet grew, so did the number of young German men eager to volunteer for duty beneath the sea. Rear Admiral Erich Topp captained 3 different U-boats during the war.
Even until the end of the war, we had always volunteers who wanted to participate in this struggle. Because, you know, submariners were an elite, and they considered themselves to be members of an elite, and therefore many wanted to, even at that time, they wanted to participate.
The reason submariners were considered elite was due in no small part to the deadly effectiveness of the U-boats. And it was the torpedo that gave the U-boat its bite. German torpedoes could be set to run at a predetermined angle, but once fired, their course could not be changed. That meant U-boat captains had to maneuver dangerously close to their targets before firing.
The moment the torpedo hit, there was a great relief because you have been out there for weeks, you have been trying to find somebody, and this from day to day looking and trying to find is wearing you down. In a submarine patrol, there are many, many days where you're just out there searching and trying to find, and that ocean is so big, and you're so small, and you have such a short area of seeing something. The boat would go to a certain speed to conserve diesel oil, and that would be a slow speed. If all at once the engine picks up, there must be something, there must be a target, or somebody must have seen somebody. So out of the bunks every head comes out, what's going on, what's going on? We have changed, we have increased our speed. Is there anything? And then you try to find out. So then when you really have a target, and then if you really can shoot at the target, there's a relief on you.
Life aboard a U-boat was harsh, but for some men, it was where they truly belonged. Like the fighter pilots of the Luftwaffe, the U-boat service had its own aces. There was no official number of kills that defined them, yet every sailor knew their names. Fearless commanders like Günther Prien, Joachim Schepke, and the most legendary of all, Otto Kretschmer, who sent over 325,000 tons of British shipping to the bottom of the sea. Among the young men drawn into their ranks was Volkmar Koenig, just 20 years old when he joined Kretschmer's famed U-99.
But the first impression is it's a very familiar atmosphere. Because the light is low, and there are noises and humming of some machines, and the music is coming off the radio. And it's not a sterile atmosphere, it's familiar, it's cozy somehow. I was lucky to come aboard a boat with a crew that had a lot of experience. They were old hands. The captain was 28 years old, he was the old man.
The U-boat aces were defined by a cold-blooded confidence and an unflinching belief that no danger could touch them.
Kretschmer became an ace because he was cold-blooded and he was very intelligent. These two factors were the main reason for his success. I don't know what Kretschmer felt. He knew he was in a war, and he was commanding a little boat in the wide open spaces of the Atlantic, like a little Viking boat in former times. And he knew what risks to take, and he knew he could rely on his crew.
U-boat ace Erich Topp sank 38 ships, the third highest total in the war.
I never have had fear on board of a submarine, even in very dangerous situations. And of course, that had an effect on my crew, and they were relying on me. And you know, when I met the wife of one of my men, she said to me, my husband says, when it is very dangerous, then I go into the pocket of my captain. So, you see, they were relying on me, and that is very important.
These were the glory days of the fearsome German U-boat fleet. But their fate was soon to take a dramatic turn. The saga continues in part 2 of Life and Death of the U-boat. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and comment below.